Welcome, welcome everybody. It's SABR Day, Saturday, the 5th of February, 2022. We welcome you to the SABR Rocky Mountain chapter. On behalf of our board of directors, we really are thrilled that you could join us today. We love baseball. That's the common thread here. There's a lot of stuff going on in baseball right now that isn't real wonderful. So we're going to just talk about our love of the game today, and we're going to celebrate the game that we love so much on an early Saturday morning. We're really glad you could join us. We have a couple of wonderful guests, just a couple of administrative things before we get started. First of all, the SABR Analytics Conference registration is still available. It's virtual. It's March 17th to the 20th. SABR members get a discount. You missed the deadline by a few days to get in there if you haven't got in there to get a cheaper registration fee, but we encourage you to join us. It's going to be a wonderful event. It always is. Our in-person luncheon on February 16th right now is in limbo. We'd really like to have it in person. Our board's going to talk about it some more, but the Blake Street Tavern right now currently does not have lunch availability because of their policy. So we're going to talk to them about that. We'll get back to you. Check for an email from Alex in regards, check our social media. SABR just unleashed an amazing analytics course online. We actually have a graduate operating the keyboard today, Mr. Alex Marks. It's a wonderful event. It's a wonderful thing to get on and learn more about analytics. As we all know, analytics is a critical, important part of the game today. I assure you, you'll learn more. And one of the principal people who put that course together is actually with us today, Allison Levin, who's one of the SABR board members. So here's what it looks like on the SABR website. It's really terrific. It's a lot of fun. It's not a course that'll be intimidating. Alex Marks took it. Alex is having fun with it. Alex suddenly has opinions on players now that have changed. It's really impressive. So I encourage you to go to sabr.org, and we, the board, really encourage you to participate because it's a really wonderful element that's being offered by SABR now. And it's at such a great price that you'd be really missing a great chance if you didn't do it. So just want to encourage everybody to take a look at that. We'll have more conversation after our two guests. We'll have an open forum. Thanks to SABR for providing us 2 hours of using their Zoom account. So let's get started. We have a couple of great guests today. We are really honored to have two special people here today to celebrate SABR Day with our chapter, Jillian Geib and Gar Ryness. Most people know Gar as batting stance guy. We're going to start with a local story, one of the best local baseball stories of 2021. Jillian Geib is a Denver native, a George Washington High School grad. She's a local. She's one of us. She went to BU, Boston University. Jillian was a glass ceiling breaker this year. She is the first official scorer who happens to be a female at Coors Field history. Jillian is a great story. She's a 5th grade teacher here in the Denver area at Denver Remote Elementary. And wouldn't you know, she teaches math. Jillian, thank you so much and welcome to our chapter virtual.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you guys today.
Jillian, you're such a great story. And this is the week that we're celebrating women in sports. So we all love your story. We love what you're all about. I think, Jillian, a lot of us would like to be you. Being the official scorer at the Rockies. We're going to show everybody a little something about the announcement that came out last year where Jillian was honored as the first official scorer in Coors Field history that happened to be a female? It sounds like this is the Marcel Marceau version of the of the version, but
That's good.
I think what we have.
It should be playing sound. My apologies.
That's all right. It was awesome, and Jillian's not getting paid by the PR move here, so we're okay on this one. But Jillian, a great story. Living in Northeast Denver. How'd you get started in baseball? What was the thing that brought you into this wonderful game of ours?
Yeah, I mean, I've basically been involved in this game my whole life. I'm sure like most of you all in this room. I grew up playing. I watched my sister from a young age playing baseball and softball. And so I wanted to get involved myself, with Little League. And that was kind of where I got my start in loving the game. I played for leagues around Denver. I played all through my elementary school and middle school days and high school days. And then kind of realized that my playing days were over. And that's when I decided to switch over to more of the behind the scenes side of baseball. But it's been a lifelong journey for me.
Well, that is so cool. It sounds like you're not done playing. You're just playing in a different way. Am I right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to be involved in this game as long as they'll have me.
Be careful what you wish for, Jillian. Trust me. Okay. Let's talk a little bit first about you personally. A fifth grade teacher here in Denver. This has been such a difficult time for healthcare workers, for teachers, for first responders. How are you doing during this whole process?
Wow, you're right about that. It has been such a strange time for everybody, but for educators, it's been just a lot of ups and downs, a lot of change, a lot of just kind of fearing for our own health, but also wanting to do the best that we can to be there for the students and for each other. So we're doing okay. Things are starting to look up, and thankfully I'm in a position right now where I get to be a teacher for the remote students. So I don't actually have to go into a building. I get to teach safely from my home. So that has been a huge help this year, but it's been tough. We're all just kind of getting through it together.
Well, we appreciate what you do, Jillian, and we really appreciate you joining us today. Now, there's a little trivia question. Jillian was a student of our former treasurer, Bill Ochbach, and Bill sends his best, Jill. He is not able to join us today, but he says hello, and he really wish he could join you today.
Yeah, I saw him at a recent gathering of baseball friends, and it was just incredible to see him after all these years. He still looks exactly the same. And connecting with a former teacher and becoming a teacher myself, I was able to share that news with him. And the first thing he said was, well, why didn't you ask me first before becoming a teacher? So I had to apologize for that, but now we're okay.
He's such a good guy. We love him. He just ended his 6-year term as treasurer, and our chapter loves him. We just love him to death. So let's talk a little bit about how you got started. Let's go back to when you first jumped into the game, almost 10 years ago. Let's talk about how you got your start.
Yeah, so like you said, it was about 10 years ago. I had kind of ended my playing days. I went to Boston University to study journalism, and my goal was to be a sideline reporter. And so that was kind of the trajectory that I thought I was going to end up on. And I had gotten an internship my last year of college with Root Sports Rocky Mountain. So, hometown broadcast for the Rockies, and really enjoyed my time there. But I actually ended up meeting one of my good friends now who works for MLB and for the Pitch FX team, what it was called Pitch FX at the time. It's now become StatCast. But he basically was able to show me the ropes. I sat with him for a few games and just kind of, it blew my mind. I was fascinated by what they were doing. And just so happened that one of the people on his team was leaving at the end of that season. So he was able to recommend me for the position. And as soon as I graduated from BU, I was training at Fenway for this pitch FX position. And so that my first season was the 2013 season. I kind of just leapt on in to the MLB.com side, the stats side, and the rest is sort of history. I've worked my way through all the different stats positions that we have at the ballpark.
And there's a fun story. When you were in college, there was a certain course you dropped out of at one point, and it's kind of ironic.
Yes, absolutely. I tried to take a statistics class. I was a journalism major, really loved writing, really loved all that multimedia stuff, was super into it. And I said, well, I probably should take a math class. So let's try statistics, because statistics is in baseball. I did not finish that class. I dropped out before it was over because I just had zero interest in it. Of course, I couldn't really see when I was in the class how it related to baseball. And I just said, you know what, screw it. I don't like this, so I am done.
Well, among those class participants, I would guess that you have done the most with statistics out of that group just about. So that's a pretty fun story.
Yeah, I guess I'm self-taught. I didn't like the classroom setting.
I like it. So Jill, here we are. And by the way, Jillian tells me that her baseball friends call her Jilly. Well, now you suddenly have a lot of more baseball friends here from the Rocky Mountain chapter. So we're going to call you Jilly the rest of the way. I'm fascinated by your climb from your initial entry into baseball in Fenway, learning how to do what you did with Pitch FX, to your path to become an official scorer. So I'd love you to talk about some of the fun things you did working your way through the game, all the different buckets that you were getting in and out of, to the point where you'd be considered for an official scorer's job.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a wild 10 years, a fun ride. So basically, as you mentioned, I started with that Pitch FX team, and that in itself has changed a lot in the last 10 years. But when I first started, we would go out on the field and set everything up before the season started. We'd have to make sure our cameras were correctly positioned, because they were triangulating every single one of the pitches to get that pitch data. And then we would be the ones to create the graphic that would then show up on the broadcast. So that in itself was a pretty cool project, and it has evolved a lot to now become the statcast system. But a few years after getting into Pitch FX, a new project started up, and it was called field timing. And that was the movement that was meant to increase or to speed up the pace of play. And so I was one of the first invited to join that team. And it started out where we would be sitting in the dugout with like a big headset on, connected to New York, and we would have a timer, and we'd have these giant colored cards. I mean, they were bigger than my face, and they weighed a ton. And we'd be out there in the rain and the snow, and we would be holding up these colored cards to signal to the umpires when they needed to start coming back from inning breaks and stuff like that. So that was the beginnings of that field timing movement. And now you see the clocks in stadiums that we run. So that obviously has evolved. And thankfully, because I did not enjoy some of those really cold nights where I would be holding up these really heavy colored cards and struggling with those. But so that was my next project. And then shortly thereafter, another project came up when betting became a thing that became very important with baseball. And so betting sort of came into the scene, and they started this project called Boss, which basically was balls out strikes, all of the basic information that we were inputting in order to get that information to the betting apps. And then from there, a spot opened up on the Stringer team, and Stringer is the one that feeds all the information to MLB Game Day, which is where you guys sometimes are, if you're watching a game online on your computer, on your phone, we're sending all that information to you. So a spot opened up with that, and I've been on that team for a few years. And then basically in this past off season, when one of our, seasoned official scorers decided it just wasn't for him this year, and he dropped off the team, they said, well, Jillian's pretty unique in that she's worked every single position that we have at Coors Field. So I think she's probably ready to go and could fill in pretty seamlessly into this official scorer role. So the rest is history.
Now, Jilly, that's a tough test. Am I right? That's a really hard test.
Hardest test I've ever taken in my life, and I was the most nervous I have ever been. I'll tell you that. There is, a bunch of different questions, a bunch of different sections. It was timed. Sometimes you didn't even have enough time to read the question before you just had to make a quick decision. So I had actually taken it once before a few years ago when they started using it as a tool to hire new employees, and they didn't make it seem like it was that big of a deal. So I said, okay, I'll just take it. No big deal. Didn't do as well the first time I took it. So I knew the second time when it was really, when it really meant something, I had to step up my game and do a little studying before I was able to pass that test.
All right. So this local girl who's hanging out with her big sister, who loves the game, you get approached to be the official scorer. What was your gut feel the moment that conversation took place?
I had so many different emotions, but obviously my first instinct was, heck yes, this is the dream. I would love nothing more than to be involved in this deeply into kind of the trajectory of the game. I am actually controlling in some aspects the way that the game goes. So, my first instinct was absolutely yes. But they did mention initially that they thought that I was going to be one of the first females to take on this role. And so they said there is an aspect of maybe some historic attention, you might be getting some attention for the historic nature of this role. So that kind of made me a little nervous, a little more pressure, just to say the least. But in all seriousness, I had nothing aside from really positive feelings. Really, I was so excited.
What was the toughest question on the scoring test?
Oh, the toughest question on the scoring test. There was a lot. Honestly, for me, the toughest calls are the pitching decisions, because you have to keep track of all of that information. And sometimes it can come down to a judgment call, based on if there's a few pitchers that, only pitch for a short time. It can, kind of come down to a judgment call. So some of those pitching decisions were a little tricky for me, because again, it's timed. So you have to really think about it, but you don't have a lot of time. So yeah, those are fun.
So you're sitting in the press box, right? Isn't that your location?
That is, I don't know. I think someone said it's called the Eagle's Nest. I don't know if that's the actual name of it, but that's what I like to call it now, the Eagle's Nest.
All right. So what time do you get to the ballpark? What are your pregame responsibilities? Walk us through what goes on during the game, if you don't mind.
Oh, that's a great question. So I usually get there, and again, this has changed with Pitch FX. We used to have to get there hours before and set everything up and make sure all of our cameras were working properly. With official scoring, and even official scoring has changed, but now we only really have to show up about an hour before the game. I log in, I talk to, anybody who's online at the time. And then we start up all of our our apps that we use. So we fire those up. We're getting a lot of information during the game, which kind of helps us to make our decisions sometimes. So I fire those up. I set up my score sheet, input my lineups, look to see if there's any news, check Twitter, see if there's been any changes that have happened across the league. And then, to be honest, my favorite part of being at the ballpark is just walking around and saying hi to all my friends. I go, I walk around, I say hi to some of the ushers. I, just enjoy some good conversations, help settle the nerves a little bit. And then about 10 minutes before first pitch, I come up and I have to check the official weather, because that's an important part of my job. Is I announce the first pitch time and then I announce the weather. And then from then on, I'm basically just really zoned into my score sheet, making sure everything's neat and organized. I actually have like 6 different sheets. That's a personal thing and something that was taught to me by Dave Einspar, who's longtime official scorer at Coors Field and my mentor through everything. So he has a bunch of sheets that he uses to keep track of things like, earned runs, another fun one, earned runs. But yeah, he has a bunch of really cool worksheets that I have adapted and made my own that I use throughout the game to keep track of all that stuff.
So how about the blowout games, the games that aren't close? You know, for a lot of us, we turn off the TV, we go for a walk, we go get some kettle corn, if you're me and Greg Petty. What do you do to keep your focus in those difficult ball games?
That is another good question. It is tough. And as someone who has watched thousands of baseball games, and unfortunately some pretty bad baseball games, it can be tough. And I am someone who maybe has a little bit of, ADD going on. I kind of like to keep my attention on multiple different places at once. So I have a couple of different screens that I'm looking at during the game, and I like to, honestly, I have multiple games up at a time, and so I'll kind of check in on those games during inning breaks. But ultimately, I'm just such a baseball person at heart that that's all I want to do is just watch the game, even if it's a blowout, even if it's a 4-hour game. Even though I might not be thrilled that it's taking so long, I'm still going to be tuned into the game.
So, Jilly, when they make defensive changes, pitching changes, hitting changes, the home plate umpire looks up to the press box to get the acknowledgement of the official scorer to officially place that person in the game. I bet you've had a couple of really fun interactions with the home plate umpire when they look up at Coors Field and they see a woman, which is such a great statement for society and for the game. I bet that's been fun for you, because I know a couple of my friends have been home plate umpires, and they said the first time they looked up and saw you, they loved it. And they smiled, gave you a thumbs up. What's that been like for you?
Oh, it's been awesome because, I would love to be an umpire myself. So I just think that the support and the positivity around it has been a little surprising, to be honest. I wasn't expecting it to be so positive, to be honest, which is a little sad, but it's been great. I've been pleasantly surprised at how positively I've been received. And, I hope to continue building relationships with those umpires, because maybe I'll be in that spot one day.
I love it. Jilly, huge statement for a woman to have that role. And it's a sad statement that that's where we've been in the past. But you're carrying a torch somewhat here for people, for young women across the game, people like you that grew up in the game and now they've got somebody to point to. Tell us about that a little bit and your feelings about being a ceiling breaker and being a pioneer in the game.
I think it's awesome. I have had honestly, I've had an outpouring of my friends who have just had babies, who've just had baby girls, telling me how important it is for them to show their daughters, what's happened in this past year, because they want their daughters to know that they can literally grow up and do anything that they want to do. So that has meant so much to me. But to be honest, I think this is just getting the ball rolling. And I already know of a couple other of my female coworkers in MLB who are going to be stepping into the official scorer role next year. And so while I think it's super, super important, and I'm really proud to have been a part of it, it needs to not be so noteworthy. It needs to just be more normal. And that is, I think, the biggest accomplishment that I feel, is that I think this has already started to feel just more normal.
I bet you're a rock star with your 5th grade students.
Yes. And actually, it's funny because we are currently in 5th grade in a unit called Breaking Barriers for literacy. And we teach about Jackie Robinson. We do a lot of reading about Jackie Robinson, but obviously they read a lot about other people who have broken barriers in all aspects of life. And to be able to show them an article that literally says women who are breaking barriers in MLB, and to say, to show them my picture and to say, that's me. I don't think that there's any better way to make that more real to the students than to show them someone that they know. And so that to me is a really, really proud moment, to be able to actually give them something that they can connect to and make their learning even that more real.
What an amazing experience. That's just so much fun. So Jillian, before we turn to questions, because I know there's a lot of people who want to ask you questions, Favorite player growing up?
Todd Helton, hands down.
Okay. Favorite team then sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if I should admit it, but it's pretty well known. Rockies are my favorite team. I grew up watching them. I was in the Rockies Rookies fan club growing up. I have like an incredible amount of Rockies memorabilia that is in my garage and displayed all over my house. So probably shouldn't admit it because of the nature of my job, but I'm just going to tell you guys because you're my best friends now. Rockies all the way.
Very cool. Alex, keeper of the chat session. I'm sure we have some questions for Jilly. So go ahead.
We do. The first one is Mr. Kurt Wells.
Hey, Jilly. Hey, I've heard a lot of stories in the past about players approaching the official scorekeeper and being unhappy that an error was called where it's an earned run on the pitcher, wouldn't have previously been. And the question is kind of twofold. Do you get any of that? And secondly, do you get it from outsiders that might be in fantasy leagues and they approach you and are upset because you've hurt their fantasy league stats? Have you ever had that happen? I've heard that from other scorekeepers in the past.
Oh yeah, that is definitely a real thing. I have personally been sitting in the press box working another role when we've had, an angry phone call from someone in the dugout asking the official scorer to, change a ruling. It definitely happens. Fortunately for me, this past season, I really had no issues with that, whether it was because they were too afraid to call me out or if they just didn't, they pretty much agreed with my calls. I remember actually there was one game where Kyle Freeland hit two like very soft bloopers to the pitcher, and they were pretty similar, but I actually called one a hit and then one was an error. And so I remember Spilly actually approached me after the game and was kind of asking me about it, and said that he had chatted with Kyle, and Kyle was obviously pulling for the hit in both situations, but I stood by my ruling. I went back, of course, as any good official scorer would do. I went back and looked at the footage and kind of collected the data and stood by my ruling. So I'm always willing to change if I think that that's something I need to do. But thankfully, I haven't really had any super negative reactions so far.
I'd like to follow up with one other thing. How long do you have officially to make that change?
So we can make changes ourselves up to 24 hours after the game. But then I think the players have 36 hours to officially make a request. And then it goes to a team in New York of, former players, official scorers, who would then look at it. And then if they vote and decide to change a ruling, then they'll let us know.
Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Next up is Joe Adana.
Hey, Julia, wonderful story. I love hearing your stories about this. I have a question for you though. So are you ever tempted to introduce some hometown bias into your calls? Let's say, for instance, John Gray has a no-hitter going to the 7th, or Charlie Blackmon has a 25-game hitting streak, and there's a questionable hit error thing. I mean, I know I'd be tempted a little bit to maybe skew the call one way or the other based on that, but you're a Rockies fan, you just admitted it. Do you ever get tempted, and how do you overcome those temptations to introduce hometown bias into your decisions?
I am absolutely tempted. The first thing that came to mind was that I was scoring that game that Marquez came this close to a complete, a perfect game. And of course, I am very tempted to make calls that would benefit the Rockies. It's just part of my training though, that I've watched so many games that my initial instinct is just the baseball instinct behind the plays. And so thankfully I'm able to kind of filter out as a fan wanting to make a call that benefits, and also though I know as a Rockies fan, I know our ballpark a little bit better. So in that respect, there is a little bit more bias that I kind of bring into my calls just because I know the ballpark and I know those tricky spots or whatever, in the outfield. But it's really hasn't been that difficult to make decisions that are pretty unbiased.
And Joe, welcome to our chapter. We're glad you joined us. Thank you so much for being a part of our chapter.
No, my pleasure, Dan. Thank you.
Next up is Mr. Paul Parker.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Okay.
No. Kidding, Paul, kidding.
Who said? Hi, I had the pleasure of meeting Jillian in December at a baseball gathering, and it was wonderful to meet you. And this is because of your response earlier in your comments. This is become more of a rhetorical question, but in the process of breaking barriers, and in not just baseball, but in all aspects of life, wouldn't you agree, and you've kind of already answered, wouldn't you agree that the final frontier of breaking barriers is reaching normalcy, where it's not such a big deal anymore? And that's the final frontier. Would you concur with that?
I would, and it's nice to see you again, by the way. I absolutely would agree with that. I think that's why, I don't think that it was lost on MLB that they needed someone, to come into this role that had a specific, I don't know, I guess, attitude towards that, of the breaking barriers. It wasn't so much to me about being the one to break the barrier. It was more about just trying to help it become more normal, trying to, spread the word about what MLB is doing currently to make it more normal. And they have this, OS University, where they're working on getting women specifically and people of color prepared to take on these roles, because they just want it to become more normal. And so I think that was really what it was, is they wanted someone who was familiar with these things that they're doing, and that was willing to just sort of be the person that was thrown into the fire a little bit more, to spread the word and to make sure that it becomes more normal.
Well, thank you very much. We're very proud of you, and go Rockies.
Thank you. Yeah, go Rockies.
Next up is Mr. Matt Klaus.
Thank you, Jilly. Thanks for being with us today, and congratulations on your job. I have kind of a procedural question. You talked about you have 6 sheets that you use to keep track of what's going on. The game ends, and then what's the process that enables your scorebook to somehow turn into the box score that we then see in all the newspapers and in MLB and ESPN? How's all that happen?
Yeah, so thankfully it's a lot quicker these days because of the computer aspect that we have. But basically all we need to do is just make sure that, the hits, runs, and left on base are going to total up to the correct number that is in the official record. So we have to just make sure that what we have matches what the MLB Game Day has, what we have on our sheet. So it really only takes a few minutes. We're just kind of totaling hits, runs, left on base to the total number of at-bats, and make sure that those match up, and then we are good to go. And then we keep the official record. So I have now a giant filing cabinet where I keep all of those sheets for every game that I will score. Hopefully the thousands of games that I will score, I have to keep all those. But yeah, that's pretty much the process. It used to take, I know, a long time, but now thankfully we've gotten to the point where technology has assisted us, and it really only takes a few minutes to close up the game.
And if I may, I have another kind of a goofy question. Suppose when a batter has 2 strikes and fouls off a number of pitches, those still count as number of pitches thrown. Do they still count as strikes even though they don't strike the batter out?
We keep track of those. Yeah, we do keep track of those. Mm-hmm.
And it is called a strike.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
I believe that is it for questions.
Jillian, I had a question for you. You've got a great path into the game. We've got a lot of young people on this call that are looking for roles in the game. your advice about how would you get your start now that you've been in the game for almost 10 years? You know, you have a very unique path. What would you say to these people that are trying to get into the game?
Yeah, my advice is just, well, number one, don't be afraid, like don't limit yourself to one path. I think that, you know, the fact that I started in broadcast journalism and have completely changed and gone on this other trajectory, and like all of my dreams are coming true, you know, that just goes to show, like, if you get an opportunity to get involved in another avenue, take it. Don't be afraid to try something new and to get involved in something different, because you never know where it's going to lead you. Also, I would just say make as many connections as you possibly can. I think I kind of mentioned this earlier. I just love talking to people. I love talking to people about baseball. I will spend, you know, every single time I'm at the ballpark, I go and I talk to, you know, all the people that I can. And even though I watch thousands and thousands of baseball games, I will still be willing to go to a game, you know, that I have off and sit with somebody new to hear about maybe their unique take on the game. Like I sat with one of the scouts this past season and just watched a game with him and chatted with him about what his job looks like. So don't be afraid to take any opportunity like that. Don't be afraid to talk to people, you know, kind of just make as many connections as you possibly can, because you never know what opportunities those might afford.
What a great
Dan,
answer.
we have one more question that just got sneaked in. So whenever you're ready, sir.
Go ahead.
Mr. Matt Replinger, former president, Mr. Matt Replinger has a question.
Hey, everybody. Julie, thanks for being here. Just stepping off the treadmill and ask a question. One of my favorite things to do as a digital scorekeeper years ago is to go and visit the umpires before the game in the locker room. Is that something that you've ever done? Thank you.
So that's another good question. It's kind of funny. The first job that I had, the Pitch FX team, our job was kind of to grade the umpires ultimately. That's what we were doing with that strike zone, is giving the umpires a grade, you know, on their calls. So in that respect, I did have to deliver that to the umpires after the game. We were supposed to deliver those DVDs with kind of their grade for the game. So I don't think I started off with the best relationship with the umpires, because I was sort of their eyes and ears and the one that was handing them either positive news or negative news. But and as an official scorer, I definitely haven't had many conversations with the umpires aside from those, you know, waves down below. But that is something that I would love to be able to do. I think it needs to be more. I think that needs to happen more in all of the positions that I work. I think there just needs to be more open communication with the umpires, and it needs to be encouraged that we chat with each other before and after the game and kind of, you know, form a relationship. So right now it's not really a big thing, but I think that's maybe where we need to move towards.
Thank you, Joe.
And thanks for joining us, Rep. Really good to see you again. Any other questions, comments? Olivia, come on, don't be bashful. You're muted, Olivia. There you go.
Dan, thank you. You know me so well. Thank you so much. This is a privilege. I mean, everybody knows my love for baseball and how much it's meant to me in my life, and so I started, as a lot of people know, in minor league baseball in 22 years ago, and this you know, this is a victory, you know, and I'm so glad that I can, you know, feel that joy, and I'm like, way to go. And I also taught elementary school, and I was a fourth grade teacher for a little bit. And yeah, they thought it was so cool, and I could use it with math, and I could use it in history. I could use it all the time. And so, yeah, I got the cool teacher marks for that. So anyway, well done. It's a privilege to meet you, and I couldn't be happier.
Thank you. Yeah, we got a lot in common, it sounds like. That is so cool.
No, well, maybe we can, you know, have a side conversation. And I'm in North Carolina now, but definitely we'll be back visiting, and miss you guys a lot.
We miss you too, Olivia. We hope you're doing well in Carolina. Jilly, I can't say a big enough thank you. I'm just so grateful that you took the time on a Saturday morning to chat with us. You're such a wonderful story, a local made good. You're just on the cusp of a great career. We're going to look up in the press box and see you all the time. Jilly, I think it's going to be a blast. Now people look over and see you, and we're really proud of you. We'd love you to come visit us in person, one of our future SABR events, and we'd love to have you as a member down the line. But thank you so very much for joining us today.
My pleasure. And really, anytime you guys see me, don't be afraid to come up and say hi. And I definitely hope to connect with you all again. Would absolutely love to.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Just great. Thank you so much, Jilly.
Thank
You've got
you.
a bunch of new baseball friends now here in the Rocky Mountain area.
That
So
is
now
what I
our
love. I love baseball people.
Well, and when they call you Jilly, they're baseball friends, right?
Exactly. That means you're in my circle.
I love it. All right, our second guest today, many of you know him from his incredible social media. He's the batting stance guy. It's Gar Ryness. Gar lives in the Los Angeles area, he's in the Los Feliz area, just an awesome area. We're going to show you a little clip to give you a little idea about Gar. If you're not a follower, you sure as heck will be at the end of today. We've got an audio problem, Alex, but Gar's getting all sorts of street cred in the Rocky Mountain chapter because that is David Letterman, and that's 2009.
I don't know if there's no audio, maybe it's photoshopped.
but Gar, let's first of all welcome to and Scott Bush, our IT professional here on the call, is helping us. And Alex, if you could take a look at Scott's message in the chat, if you get it to work, we can fire it up and we can, the joys of live situations. Are you able to get that to go?
You continue and I will read through his message. So continue.
Outstanding. Well, Gar's one of us, just like Jillian. He's a huge baseball fan, a self-described baseball dork. I love your amazing self-deprecating term where you say you have the least marketable skill in America. Gar, welcome to our chapter virtual. Gar does batting stances, and now he's segued into pitching and broadcasting impersonations. But Gar, just welcome, and we're loving to have you here today.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. Nice to be amongst dorks. I would have been a fifth grader going into Jillian's class, like really frustrated with why did she give Trevor Story an error last night? Like I would have, nobody's smarter than like fifth graders to sophomores in high school. So yeah, that would have been tremendous street cred if my fifth grade teacher was the official scorekeeper for the local team. Unbelievable.
Absolutely. I kept thinking when I first heard the story, I might have flunked fifth grade just to get another year of baseball in fifth grade. I don't know. Yeah. So Gar, you've got this massive following. And as somebody who's been in the game my whole life, I know the guys in the clubhouse just are all over you. They love you. How did this whole phenomena start?
So appreciate the question. Yeah, to bring people up to speed, possess the least marketable skill in America. Okay, if you want to get involved in television, what I would do is wait till you're 35, balding, married with kids, athletically past your prime, and then post something on, you have a friend post something on YouTube that you don't even know what it is, and they will, TV cameras will show up in your backyard. I literally think the Rockies Jumbotron shot stuff in my backyard here in LA. They like sent a jersey, and they sent, I think, this hat. And they're like, so there was no business plan that was put forth. It was simply like everyone on this Zoom. I just was way too into baseball while other people were like, meeting girls and hanging out and reading books. I was just enamored with baseball. And so as we would kind of play, so I grew up in Northern California, and we would play stickball in the front yard, and I would just pretend to be the players. And those of us that did not grow up in snow, California they're okay sports fans to not great sports fans. So when I was doing imitations in my front yard, none of my buddies knew that looked like I didn't know that I was imitating Dwayne Murphy or Tony Armas like they really were. And so it wasn't until I went to college at Syracuse, when people like Denver, like read books, watch things, think, they can't go rollerblading in December, so it was the first time that people were like, that really looks like Lenny Dykstra. Like when we would play wiffle ball, honestly, Dan, I'd never been told that, wow, that really looks like Howard Johnson. So I swear I was 19. I mean, I was before I would get the reaction that now, like I see from the players. So I didn't know that I was like sitting on anything that was actually like a commodity, So it wasn't till then. And then what would happen is I moved back to California, and so I would just kind of be living life. And then I'd go to a wedding of a friend in college back east, and then somebody would bring a wiffle bat, and there would be like a group that would gather around and be like, hey, do Robin Yount, do. I was like, all right. So it was, we were playing. So my kids now, they're like mid-teens to early 20. And so we were all in 2008 playing stickball in the front yard. A buddy said, hey, can I, or he wanted me to imitate some Red Sox because he's from Boston. And so he was laughing. It was like Mo Vaughn, Kevin Youkilis. And he's like, hey, I think my buddies in Boston would like this. Can I film you and then send it to him? And so I swear, this is April of 2008. I wasn't sure how you do that. So he videoed it. Somebody called out 15 names of Red Sox. And then I thought he was gonna, I don't know, send a VHS or like burn a DVD and send it to him. Like I didn't know there was another way to do it. And so he put it on YouTube, which I didn't know what that was. And then, and we're friends. It wasn't like he stole it, or it wasn't Pam and Tommy on Hulu. No, it was, he shoots this video, puts it on YouTube, sends a link to them. And then a day later, there's like 15,000, 20,000 views. We can't figure it out. And then I get a bunch of, hey, this guy named Bill Simmons ran it on his page on ESPN2 or page 2 on ESPN. So it got a whole kind of audience that like, look at this crazy Red Sox fan. I don't care about the Red Sox. He said like, hey, he's a Red Sox fan. So he's like, let's see Red Sox. So I don't like the Red Sox more than the Rockies. And so Bill Simmons ran on his page and then a week later, it ran on the front page of YouTube for a day. So then it went from, 20 comments to 1,500 comments. It went to 200,000 views. And by the way, there's no spell check on YouTube, just so you know. So it was a lot of people were like, this is awesome. This is hilarious. And then I know there's no spell check based on the number of times I was called Doshbag, on what's said on YouTube for people that don't understand, like, what is doing? So it got such a crazy response. And I have 3 younger siblings who can talk. I can see by the hairlines on this call that this is my people. So when I would get texts from my brother, like, and his friends, like, dude, it just went viral. You're featured. I mean, it all sounded like a sickness or like I didn't understand. I'm like, all right. I'm like walking my, 3rd grader to school. It's like, what are you talking about? Featured. And it was like,
Mhm.
it was wild. And so then I just thought, because I'm sitting on the kind of same knowledge of kind of each team, I just thought, well, if people like the Red Sox so much, like, well, why don't we do let's shoot a Cardinals video and a Cubs next week, or Yankees, or I don't know. I thought, yeah, let's just put out content, figuring that the winds of the internet are fickle. So I was like, there may be some like 8-year-old that recites all the World Series MVPs backward, on Friday. So it's like, let's get this out quick because I'm about to go away. That's really what I thought.
This just exploded. All of a sudden, New York Times,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, the Letterman show, totally unexpected. Am I right?
Oh, totally unexpected. Yeah, like if any of you have kids, my sister draws this show called Bubble Guppies. And then my brother was had a 10-year run on Broadway. So he was just, Miss Trunchbull and Matilda, and he's super talented, won a Tony for hair back around the same area. So the
Wow.
least marketable skill in America, that was a joke in my family because
Mhm.
I was the only one not doing like interesting entertainment stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like it was like there. Sure, I can like imitate my aunt at Thanksgiving, but I was the only one not doing any of this stuff. So when it was the Twins that were the first one, so it was Fox Sports North, and I get this email, kind of the YouTube version of email across, and he said, "Hey, this is Eric Manwaring from Fox Sports North. We've seen your video. Can you come in tomorrow to do the pregame show?" And I remember, I first of all, I thought I was being punked because it was like the first team I really loved growing up somehow was the Twins. It made no sense growing up in Northern California, but I loved Kent Herbeck. And I don't know why, I just love those like from 84 on Twins teams.
Mhm.
And I emailed back like, first of all, is this real? Second of all, I don't live in Minnesota. He was like, what? How do you know these players on the Twins? Like he just figured I lived in Edina and was like, could ride my bike in. And then same Brewers were like, hey, can you come in tomorrow? I was like, I'm not in Wisconsin. And then finally the Dodgers. So I don't know if when you were here, if Eric Burak was working for Fox Sports, but he basically,
Yep.
Eric said, hey, can we fly you out to Dodger Stadium on email? And I emailed back, why don't I just ride my bike? There, like
It's right down the street.
I wouldn't even get on the freeway. It's right there.
That's right.
He's like, what? I figured you lived in Boston. I figured you like, and so then, so I do a couple of different TV appearances. And at that point, every time you'd seen me, it was a backyard video where my buddy Caleb and Peter like call out names and I imitate them. So at that point, I'd still never spoken. So when I started doing these interviews, people were like, had just been sure I had like something high functioning, or I definitely couldn't interact with females, like that there was going to be a personality that this guy, the skill set lends itself to like, he probably shouldn't operate a weapon, or he's probably a danger to society. So it was really fun because people were pretty surprised. So then Fox Sports had me do a bunch of commercials, the TV appearances, a couple of late night, like that was crazy. It was just totally wild.
What's it like going in a clubhouse and imitating the guys in the clubhouse that you're there with?
So if anyone does impressions of any kind, Olivia, Joe, and Alex, if anybody just imitates their mom to their siblings, all right, obviously the more contextualized you make it, the better. So if you were, again, Thanksgiving and you imitated Uncle Rick's laugh, you get laughter that's like, whoa, like Chris Rock couldn't make this room laugh as hard as I just made him laugh because Uncle Rick does laugh like that. It's just hard to find an audience that you can be that familiar with, which is why New York City, a stand-up comedian, like everyone's going to do 5 minutes on the subway, and because it's like, here's the thing I can say that everybody relates to. Whereas if you do like a college dorm joke, there's a lot of people that didn't go to college, so they're like, oh, okay. So as I, and like you, like, I'm not hanging out, I don't know about you hats, but like, I didn't go to high school with a bunch of celebrities. So I don't know like how you're supposed to act. I just figure they're like self-absorbed, possibly dumber, and immediately forgot 1,000 people they grew up with. Like once they get in movies, they're like, well, they wouldn't remember me. Even though if you grew up across the street from a movie star, they'd be like, yeah, I remember who my neighbors are from when I was. So when I went in the locker room, teams started having me in the locker room. Dan, I swear it was the reverse. So what would happen is literally it was reversed. It was the level of nuance. Back to Thanksgiving and you making Uncle Rick laugh. It's like every player, every nuance or joke or exaggeration I'm doing is their Uncle Rick. Like they've just seen Gary Matthews Jr. do that thing with his foot 10,000 times in practice and spring training, and I don't have 6 people in my life that would like literally last week. I was the entertainment in the middle of the Kansas City Royals fantasy camp. So when George Brett asked for John Wathan, and I say, well, it's all elbow and mouth. And so when I go like this with my mouth and then stick my arm up like this and then tell the campers that this is the only player that all you guys now look like batting, like the way that he bats. And like, Dan, I don't know 2 people in my life that would laugh at a John Wathan take. And like John Wathan's daughter runs the fantasy, and like he gets up and leaves. George Brett falls over. Willie Wilson's throwing. I mean, it was like a wave of comedy. That's what happens when you go in the locker room, and the level of nuance that they get. I'm floored. Like my family, nobody has any idea what I'm doing, and then the players of all people. First of all, why would I think I would be hanging out with players? Like why would I think that's even a thing? And the level of nuance and them being able to come up to me and say, hey, when you did this, like Alex Gordon, hey, when you do this with Hosmer's face and with the way that like Lorenzo Cain ran, like, can I video and send it to him? Because it's like, it's so crazy, like how astute the pro athletes are on what you're doing, and it's been maybe the most fun of all of it is finding an audience that I would have never imagined. Well, first of all, I don't think it was possible pre-internet. I don't know how it would have.
Agreed. Agreed.
So it's been and plus it's very like Lions Denny. So what teams will do, a lot of times there's no camera allowed in the room. So like this has happened with the Yankees, Astros, Mariners, where they'll put me in the middle of the whole locker room. And in spring training, sometimes there's it seems like there's 1,000 people in there, number 108. Yes. And so they'll put me right in the middle, and it's very like Lions Den. It's like, this might be 4 minutes, nobody laughs, and I'm out. Or it's like the funniest thing it's like people are falling down, and it's so crazy. It's really crazy to be in the middle of the team, kind of like Lions Den with a bat and nothing else. And,
amazing. For those of you who haven't followed him to this point, Gar's doing something amazing right now, where he's doing every day during the lockout. You're doing one of your favorite players, and it's just been hysterical. I was with somebody the other day, a longtime big leaguer, and he said to me, "Man, he does him better than him." And I said, I agree. So let's jump into some guys. Is that cool? Are you all right with that?
Yeah. Dan, I think I can pull up the Letterman show now, if you want to try that as a sample.
Let's do it.
All right.
Alex, feeling the pressure. Let's do it.
Or to be invited to Ken Herbeck's birthday party next year. But either one.
That's it's a wiffle ball bet, essentially, isn't it?
It's in the family of wiffle.
All right. Now, Gar, so you go wherever you're going to go, and then I can just call out any ball player?
Now, are you going to call out the names like you alluded to with Joe Morgan or Willie Stargell?
I'll just call out some names here. Manny Ramirez.
All right, so Manny, I got a chance to meet and talk to, and I said, well, do you want me to imitate you from Cleveland? He's like, oh, you know Cleveland?
Right.
And so
Manny Harris, here
at
we go.
Washington Heights and Cleveland, he was leaning forward, kind of like Carl Yastrzemski did at the very end of his career.
Yeah.
And then now he's going. You know, kind of go.
Okay. All right. His old buddy at the Red Sox, David Ortiz.
Yeah, so Big Papi actually hugged me in spring training and says, oh boy, you had us laughing last year. I can't, this is. I can't go like this and that. Like,
Yeah, beautiful.
more of a waddle.
Cal Ripken Jr. This is going back a little bit. Cal Ripken Jr.
I think our segment is not going to be long enough to do the 21 different stances that he had. Yeah, he had ones that started up high like this, then went like this.
Right.
He did the violin at one point where he would go like this. He had one time like this. He had one time like this. That's not true.
Okay.
But the swing was always the same.
All right, perfect. Lovely. All right. I used to think I could do a little of this one, especially in the end of his career. Ricky Henderson.
Oh, really?
Really.
That I stretched up there just in case you asked.
Yeah,
that.
let's see a little Ricky Henderson.
So Ricky came into play right about the time I started walking. He would wear really colorful batting gloves, and then he would get really, really low, like this, and then he would delay a little bit, as if to say, I'm so fast that you can't even throw me out on the grounder. He'd go. There was like a year, there was probably a year or two where he wore like a fedora and a pipe. He was very like stylized.
Kevin Youkilis.
All right, this is the best one. I think right now, Kevin Youkilis is the best one, and I got to meet him, and he had watched some of the Cincinnati Reds. Did you grow up liking the Reds?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so he did too, and so he said, I can't believe you're Sean Casey and Hal Morris. So I asked him a couple questions like, Kevin, why do you do this when you're on deck? It doesn't look like anything. And he said, I don't know, I saw Jeter doing it, and I kind of thought it was cool. I was like, my virgin ear, like, I can't understand. You're not Yankees. And then Joe, he said, yeah, I finished my swing like this. I said, why do you let go with the wrong hand? He said, I saw Joe DiMaggio do it. I was like, you can't tell me Red Sox, Yankees. So he basically puts his knees together, looks like that, sweating profusely with a large hairball on his chin. And he'll go like this, and he'll go like this.
All right. Mentioned Derek Jeter. Let's see Derek Jeter.
All right, so Derek Jeter is incredibly cool, and he still calls for time, but not with his fingers, with his wrist each time. So he'll go. And then when he takes a pitch, he'll take it all the way in like this.
Takes it all the way in.
And then Paul Schaefer's never in danger when Jeter actually bats, but when he finishes a swing, he'll usually do this. Throw it right at your.
Now here's one. I remember when I lived in California watching this and thinking he had a particularly unique stance and swing. Rod Carew.
Rod Carew. That's a fantastic choice. On the Twins, he was a little bit more up, but then he got so loose when he was on the Angels.
Right.
In between the first and second pitch, often he would fall asleep for a very short. It was very short. They would focus. They usually adjust his hat. Fall off.
A lot of one-handed hits. Okay. Charlie Hustle, not going to the Hall of Fame. All-time hit leader, Pete Rose.
All right. Well, he tries to get down as far as everybody in baseball history, except Phil Plantier. Oregon, as you did early on. He would go around.
And, all right, one more. Willie Stargell.
All right. So pop by. You're outing your age with all of
I
these
know.
selections.
What can I do?
I never get emails for these guys because a lot of them don't have email accounts.
There it is, Willie Stargell. Guy Ryness, ladies and gentlemen. Look at there. Thank you.
Absolutely awesome. I'm tearing up. I'm laughing so hard. So you nail those guys.
There it is. There's
Cigar.
the gift.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was the gift he gave at the very end. I don't know if you saw him handed that. It was
That's brilliant.
A bucket of pine tar.
That's brilliant. We will check you after this appearance. We'll check your cap after you're all done here.
Just don't go George Brett on us.
I know. That's true.
That's exactly. Cigar.
Yeah.
Who's on the Mount Rushmore? In your Mount Rushmore?
So it's a combo of Mount Rushmore and book plug. So the craziest, well, not maybe that was probably the craziest thing appearing on Letterman, but yeah, Simon Schuster had me write a book on framed around the 50 greatest stances of my lifetime. Hold on, let me grab it. So it's so the Mount Rushmore is so blah blah. So here we go. So it's like if Jon Stewart was a baseball fan, it's like more about me getting rejected by girls in junior high necessarily than what Ben Ogilvy actually did with his stance. But the Mount Rushmore, the top four, I'll save you the purchase price. Number ones, so the top four are Julio Franco, Tony Batista, not Jose Bautista, Tony Batista, Craig Counsell, especially one specific year on the Brewers, and Kevin Youkilis.
Okay, and if there had to be one you picked, who's the one who's like the guy?
The guy. Oh, what? Oh, of those? Oh,
Yeah.
Youkilis. Oh, Kevin Youkilis is he's the best. I mean,
Okay,
Kevin
so-
Youkilis, and he even one time in the New York Times answered a question that batting stance guy owes me royalties.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And we become friends. By the way, I don't know if you know this. So Kevin Youkilis married Tom Brady's sister and lives in Northern California. And if you're ever in Los Gatos around there, he has a brew pub that he runs and he's in there. Like if he's not coaching his kids. So whenever I stop by there, I'll just stop and we'll like hang out and chat for 20 minutes. And again, San Francisco Bay Area, you could be the most famous athlete in the world and everyone's like, doesn't care.
They're just wondering what the traffic is on the 405.
Yeah,
That's all they care about.
Driving a Tesla with tech money, and they're like, "Oh, you do what? Oh, that's nice."
All right, how about Nolan Arenado?
Oh yeah, you ready? You want to see it?
Absolutely.
All right, so with Nolan, all right, let's see how far. I don't know if you can see it. Okay, how are we?
We need a little more of the skull.
All right, a little more of the skull. All right. So with Nolan Arenado, all it is like crazy manic energy. So think of Jillian's class and fifth graders. And so it's a lot of like moving the hands and then fidget. And it's he's obviously in good shape, but he definitely pulls on the back of his shirt. For those of us that aren't in great shape, he does the thing that you do when you like gain 50 pounds. But I think he's just kind of manically moving around. And it's a lot of like, the bat moves and it's manic, and then he'll do the thing with his elbow where clearly like he almost does like the Fernando Tatis Jr. like my arm's about to pop out, so let me. And then just when you think it can't get any crazier, he goes, "Okay, now when are you relaxing, falling backward? What's this?" And then so if any of you are like coaching youth sports, what Nolan is better at than anyone else is the freeze frame stop action of him following the ball. So like when I'm coaching like 10U girl softball, like if I can just get the girls to look at the ball, like follow them, we'll do whole drills where if they watch, don't swing, if they just watch the ball until the ball stops rolling, then nobody has to run, because they just even you're not even have to swing, you just look. So Nolan Arenado, if you watch his, I mean, most of the guys look at the ball for sure, but Nolan Arenado is the best at, like, his head will completely turn. He's almost like behind, like looking toward the catcher. So much so that if you notice when he hits the ball, because he looks at it, he doesn't know where it is. So he'll go like, like what's happening? Like it's almost like he's gonna, like Jimmy Pearsall, he's gonna like run the wrong way or backwards or like start to third. He's like, I don't know if it's foul.
Cigar. Let's do Jilly's. Let's do Todd Hilton.
All right. So Todd Hilton is okay. So what he seems like is like somebody that just learned how to play. So he'll like walk up there very angular, and then he'll be like, okay, so I just put the bat toward the pitcher. So it's like he'll like, it's like he's not like flowing easy, like heck, like Dan Evans playing slow pitch softball. It's not like, dude.
Hey.
He's like Alex Marks trying to post something. It's like, it's very clunky and like you don't know what to do. So this, and then he'll stand straight up. And then when the pitch comes, he'll be like, okay, should I put my knee up? It's almost like he's like a Captain Morgan ad or something. And then after he hits it, he'll like, he doesn't do the thing where he hits it and then runs, or it's not smooth. It's like, he'll do like, okay, first I put the bat out, then I put the bat over my head, then I put my knee up, then I swing, then I bring the bat all the way back. Then, even before I start running, if it's a home run potentially down the line, I'll walk and then point like, please go fair, please go fair, please go fair.
Are you stretched out?
Oh. Why are you going to ask for Alex Coles?
That was one of them. Yes.
With my like Eric Dickerson awesome glasses.
Oh, that's a good one. Kurt Wells remembers that stance.
Dan, we got a couple suggestions in the chat room. Whenever you're
Well,
ready.
let's bring it on. I have one personal. I hope you're stretched out. You're stretched out, Gar, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Reginald Martinez Jackson.
Okay. Okay, so with Reggie, let's be real. It's about a system of about 5 things done over and over and over again. So it is figure out what's going on with the knob. You spit, you go to the glasses, you go to the hat, but then do it fast motion. So it's and then on a swing, on a hit, it's but my problem, and the reason you're asking me to stretch is because you are a Reggie fan. And I remember seeing baseball cards and magazine covers where I couldn't figure out if he was right-handed or left-handed. So it's like he would finish his swing and he would be like in 5th grade, Mrs. G's class, I would have had like a stormtrooper, little like Star Wars figure, and I would have turned them to where like C-3PO's butt is facing the wrong way but that's how I felt like Reggie would be completely coiled around. Like if he was striking out off Bob Welch, it was like his legs and his arms and the way, and his like Tom Seaver, his knee would be like scraping the ground. It's It's so strange.
Oh, that's awesome. I am a Reggie connoisseur. Alex, you've got people who with requests. I love it. Let's go.
First one is Rymel Tapia.
Oh, right. Okay. So, oh, it's so great. So I need this chapter to figure out a way to get the Rockies into the postseason, because no one's going to know Tapia, and they should. So from the elbows together to getting down, like I'm out of the screen if I do the Tapia. So he'll do the thing in the box where he goes like Sammy Winder touchdown. He goes completely to the ground. It's like he has too much dip for how much he weighs. Like his ratio is bad. So it's like elbow, all the way down, do this like, it's like this like ninja pose, and then maybe do a little like Ichiro sleeve, and then more of this. Oh, he's great. He's great. And by the way, that one year he hit like 320 or 315. I think he was in the top 10 or top 5. And then his swing too, it's like his helmet flies off. It's so great. But I need him on a, you know what he reminds me of is Micah Vilas. He kept being on teams that weren't in the postseason. I'm like, oh my gosh. Tony Batista, perfect example. He had like 40 homers and 100 RBIs, but it was like he was allergic to the playoffs. So he just couldn't, the rank and file would not know who he was.
Yeah, you need him on the stage so everybody can see him swing it. Who else we got, Alex?
Next up is Javi Baez.
Oh yeah, so Javi Baez is he does a little Reggie with how he finishes. Yeah, so he'll kind of lean back a little bit, and then luckily now he has a off Amir Garrett. I now can, with Javi Baez, I now can like paddleboard my way to first. You know, it's funny. So here's what's so fun about social media. I mean, it's weird, but it's also okay, so my family was down in Balboa Island, to put it in Dodger terms, Newport Beach. And so when that happened, so that happened in like late July of whatever year that was, maybe last year. And then Javi Baez hits the thing off Amir Garrett. So we have some neighbors that have that we were staying with that had paddle boards. So that next day I go out and I shoot on a paddle board the Javi Baez and then start paddling away, post it, and Amir Garrett, the guy that gave up the homer, like liked it and retweeted it out or like put it on Instagram. It's okay. He was like, "Oh, that's hilarious." The guy that gave up the home run that Baez was doing that for.
And you know, you had the Carew thing, which is hilarious with Letterman. Carew follows you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he comments all the time about it. He'll say, "You nailed it," or "Good job." Hall of Fame.
Crazy.
What else we got, Alex?
We have a request for Eric Davis.
Okay. By the way, also very entertaining. If you ever like run into him, he does imitations great, like batting stance imitations. He does them himself. So loose, the bat, he's not even holding it. So he'll just go real loose with the bat, and then he'll go and throw the bat down, and gosh, he's so good. That home run to start off the 1990 World Series, that's the one. Off Dave Stewart.
Awesome.
I can't see if you want to just call him out.
I will. So we have Joe Adano, raise your hand. Joe, did you have a batting stance you wanted to do or a question first?
No, I have a batting stance request, and hopefully you could do this, Gar, but I grew up a Met fan since the '69 series, and my favorite at-bat of all time, 2016 Petco Park, big sexy Bartolo Colon home run off James Shields.
So luckily, one of the things that the players laugh at the most, it's the facial expression and the run. And so Cologne, basically his swing is just whatever, it's. And then the run, when I was in the middle of the giant stretching circle and people asked for Benji Molina, if you can, apologies to the women for me saying this word, but if I can run to where my boobs are kind of bouncing, the players completely fall over. So with Cologne, it's more of kind of a bajinga, 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 bajinga. It's more like that. So like on a Benji Molina run, it was bong, 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 bong. And it just, the whole team just kind of like rolls over on the ground. You can bring their run involved. Bong, bong. So that was Cologne looks like he's like running on ice fast and is running with like Keds on and he can't slow down. So he's just like, okay, I should slow down. And by the way, what's amazing about that clip is Cologne hits it off James Shields of the Padres, who is then traded for Fernando Tatis Jr. So that play is like this epic lore of like the complete like bottom of the Padres metaphorically, and then the fact that like if they ever rise to prominence, it'll literally be because of a guy in that highlight.
I was actually at that game at Petco. That was amazing.
Really?
Oh, stunning. I couldn't believe it. I mean, he's one of the worst hitters I've ever seen in my life. And when he went out, and he went way out, that was about 8 rows back.
Yeah.
And it was like on a really murky, and you know what it's like down in Petco. It's hard to hit a ball down the line.
Yeah.
And he went out and his bench they were stunned.
Yeah.
They were absolutely stunned.
That's so fun. That is a really fun I was there game.
Yeah, I've got the ticket stub. I just thought it was stunning. You grew up in Giantville. Will Clark.
Oh yeah. So Will it's sleeve tug. It's like, like Guy Smiley type, like almost Muppet eyebrows, and then it's making a loud. Back to the Muppets, it's making a noise that doesn't sound like it would come from him. So it's like when you take a picture, and it's very lefty and awkward and pointy. By the way, okay, so as you start to get to know like your heroes and there are things that sound great in your head, and then when you say it out loud, you realize it doesn't work out loud like it did in my head. So ESPN ran the show E60, did a thing on stances, and they ended it with me imitating Will Clark for Will Clark in Arizona.
Oh, wow.
And so meeting him was such a thrill. And I remember meeting him and saying some combination of, hey, you're my ATM pin for my like his some combination of name and number. I was trying to tell him that like, hey, like I honor you by saying that like things that are really important to me, are like but as I said it, I was like, oh, this sounds like weird and stalkery, and like my shrine, I light a candle to your face in a shrine in my bedroom it's like, oh boy. Even if it's true, I was like, never again am I gonna. When I meet Kent Herbeck, I'll be cool. But it was Will Clark. I was like, I met Dan. Like after that, Will Clark, I was like, okay, just chill out and just try to be normal, even if it's like the biggest celebrity in your brain you've ever met. Just be cool. Don't tell him that your ATM pin is his name and not. It's too weird.
Alex, keep going. It's all you, bud.
Okay. Hopefully everyone can still hear me because looks like someone tried logging into the chapter Zoom account. So if it gets disconnected, my apologies, but let's keep going. Carlton Fisk.
Oh yeah. So Carlton Fisk, we know obviously like the swing and the go fair. But with Carlton, a little bit like Nolan, it's like a subdued quirky.
So Carlton Fisk will do the stretch, then he'll mess around with his sleeves, then he'll like clear out the cobwebs on his brain. So he'll do something like this, like he'll go this and then this before he makes sure it goes fair. Carlton Fisk.
Oh God, I saw Carlton Fisk bat about 12,000 times in my career. And the eyes, those were the eyes. Good job.
Next up, come on, Julio Franco.
Oh yeah. So this is the one that works for every generation. So like 9-year-olds and 85-year-olds will, like 90-year-olds don't ask for Big Papi, 7-year-olds don't ask for, Paul Molitor, but Julio Franco, every generation has heard the stories. He was just taking batting practice last year in like South Korean.
That's right.
It's like a batting cage, and he's still.
Yep.
I mean, looks like he's unbelievable shape. And I think he had one of the biggest bats too, like a 37 ouncer or something like this. So he would put his knees together and then put the bat over the head, and then like slap shot, almost like throw his back foot up. Yeah, there were some really good teams that Julio was on where you'd have like Ruben Sierra, you'd have, Franco's just, it was very consistent too. Like early 80s Indians to, him being like my age on the Mets or the Braves. Like, awesome, Julio Franco.
Ernie Banks.
So Ernie Banks so I'll do his 500th home run, but because I was born in 73, I'm not actually 73.
I didn't really watch him, so it was just, it looked like he kind of leaned over a little bit, had the hands but my brain really turns on around 1980. So I'm only giving you 42 years worth of, not 160.
About Dante Bichette.
All right. So Bichette is a lot of put the bat over the head. Put the bat over the head. Then, of course, every imitation of a Dante Bichette needs to be about one night where Jillian Geib works every night at.
So I think this is crazy. All right. I think this is crazy. So when the Yankees had me perform for their team dinner, and it was so wild, you guys have all been to a million, like the local Rotary or the Habitat for Humanity chapter, or something where it's like, 60 people and chicken dinner, and it's a nice hotel and whatever, but it's people in khakis, a little overdressed. They don't. So it was just crazy. It was the Yankees. So it was that same situation we've all been into, a work thing or the awards ceremony, but it was like Derek Jeter. It was like the Yankees in that situation. So I'm in there, and then Ichiro was on the team at the time. This is Jeter's last year. So Sabathia would call out, all right, do this person. And that's where you find out who's, like, we all know the stats, and we all know, oh, that guy's a 5-time All-Star. Oh, he's never even been All-Star. But what Dan knows, and anyone that's like worked with teams, but like where a bunch of us on this call wouldn't know, is the level of disdain or popularity that players would have on this team. So I go there, and everyone on the, like celebrity wise, A-Rod would be the biggest person on the team. No one said his name. And then right when I get up there, the second name called is Francisco Cervelli. I'm like, what? The backup catcher? What are we doing here? Like, why don't we? Well, shouldn't we go to Jeter first? Like, shouldn't we? Carlos Beltran's Hall of Fame. Like, shouldn't Ichiro is in the, like, Reggie? Brian Cashman was like, can you do Andy Pettit, who happened to be there that day? And I was like, why are we doing Cervelli? Like, how would I know how beloved like the backup catcher is? So it's like, okay, Francisco Cervelli. So it's just, all right. So it's like, and so Ichiro's there, and I can't believe it. And I'm like, hey, Ichiro, I noticed that like 5 years ago, you started like sniffing your sleeve. So, you do the whole thing. Ichiro, but he started to do when he would tuck the Will Clark sleeve, he started like sniffing his armband, and he didn't early on. So it's like, why do you do that? He's like, it smelled like shit. Like he would. So we're kind of back and forth. Night ends. So later on, I like walk around the city, pretty fun. I take off my hat. I'm not wearing a jersey. So this is like 3 hours later, and I'm staying in that hotel. So I come back, I meet with some friends or whatever, come back in the hotel, and then I'm going to my room, and I get on the elevator, and then there's like a bodyguard and then Ichiro gets on the elevator, and there's like autograph seeker, and they're like, stay away. Because to me, he and I are the same age, but I just see him as like just one of the biggest stars I've ever seen in my life. Mm-hmm. And so he gets in the elevator. Again, I'm not wearing the same stuff. And remember my thought on celebrities is like, you immediately forget 1,000 people from you. So I'm just kind of sitting there or standing there in the elevator going up. There's like a bodyguard and there's him. And I turn to look at him and he's smiling at me. So I think, okay, I think he maybe, and says nothing. He just looks at me the whole time. I kid you not. He says, Dante Bichette. Like, all right, well, and then he laughs, getting off. So of 500 people that I would have guessed, hey, if Ichiro runs into you in a dark alley and asks for it was like Jay Buhner, Ken Griffey Jr. I mean, honestly, like Hideki Matsui. I mean, I would have guessed 1,500 people before a really good Rocky with a WAR of less than 10 that played 20 years ago. It's like, what? How is that the guy? By the way, don't know to this day. And then here's a wild thing. So the next day is opening day. It's in Houston. So Yankees have me down on the field, and then the players are going to do like batting practice or whatever. Reggie Jackson walks by and he's like, hey man, how you doing? And of course, like people that are on the field, dignitaries or whatever, there's like, Houston investment bankers being like, how do you know Reggie Jackson? Like, why are they waving at you? And so then Ichiro comes by, gets Cervelli and gets a couple other people, gets my attention, and then starts exaggerating my imitations of them back to me. Wow. It was the next day. It was like meta, like my head like came off of my head. It was just like spinning in the ground. I couldn't believe it. Not to mention, one of the craziest things that's ever happened to me is Ichiro just organically in an elevator requesting a Dante Bichette. So I can't think of the Rockies. I can't think of Denver. I can't think of anything without. It's so strange. And maybe at that point he knew Bo Bichette, or maybe he works out with Dante. I have no idea. Or maybe he grew up. Yeah. I don't even understand, because he was already a pro. By the time most of us knew who Dante Bichette was, Ichiro was already like a pro in, winning 7 straight batting titles and on the Orcs Blue Wave. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy, but he loves the game as much as anybody I've ever met. He's extraordinary. He watches every game. He watches highlights. He's just all over people. So it probably makes a little sense, because he gave a damn about Bichette.
I like that Bichette shows up. Obviously, it's like the greatest. You could make the case it's like the greatest Rockies highlight in a way, that like Blake Street Bomber opening night hit. Yeah. But also you see him a lot, and he's like a young Angels outfielder that happens to be the left fielder that runs into the fence when the Griffies went back to back. So he's in He's in that shot. Wearing
That's right. Kirk McCaskill gave him up, I think.
2 in a row.
I think we've got a Yachty request, Gar. Do you mind?
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's allowed. Let's see, oh yeah. So yeah, with Yachty, a little bit like John Wathan, maybe it's a catcher's thing that like your mouth goes like this. Although John Wathan's like pterodactyl wings tattoo went less to his face than Yachty's. So Yachty's like, first of all, he has like FUBU pants. So he has like baggy pants. And he's like one of those guys that if he lost 50 pounds, you'd be like, I think he did. I can't tell. Because whereas with Justin Turner, you're like, whoa, I think my wife even was like, I think Justin Turner just like lost 30 pounds because he looked really thin. So Yachty is like kind of standing straight up. Lips kind of, you can see his bottom teeth. And then he'll run around the circle. And then he'll first of all, he'll get mad at you if you don't play the game the right way or you show someone else. But then on a walk-off sack fly, he'll throw the bat into the right field bleachers.
Oh, that's so true. That is so true.
So Dan, we got a couple questions for Gar. We want to move to those?
Yeah, let's go.
So the first question is from Scott Bush. Other than the players themselves, what are your inspirations behind this? And I'll just read this little disclaimer. The impersonations have always reminded me of the characters of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. And for those of you who don't remember, that was a very early 80s video game with Mike Tyson.
Look, I'm Bald Bull. But as a fighter, I'm more Glass Joe. I'm less less able to handle actual punches. So one of the things about imitating baseball players is I don't have to be good at voices. So like a Saturday Night Live star is like an actual real, it's just really good at it. And there's some like I think Joey Molinaro or Morano. There's a guy in Indianapolis that's hilarious who does a lot of voices, and Frank Caliendo. He and I follow each other on Twitter and we'll talk. And so there are people that are great at voices. So that's what's so fun is, I don't have to do voices when it comes to Reggie Jackson or whatever. So I was the last guy on my bench in high school. So and I just loved it. And so one of the things I try to do, and I'll try to make this story like Rocky centric, because it's happened in every single place I've been, including last week with the Kansas City Royals fantasy camp. As the last guy on the bench and loving baseball, what I want to do is honor the rank and file that are there. So there'll be events I go to where, obviously like Eddie Murray, Bobby Bonilla, there are these people, of course, I'm going to, I know them. And then what I've found over time is that, if Rajay Davis is there, we'll talk later and he'll say like, I was just praying no one would say my name because he would be afraid. So when I was in the middle of this, when the Rockies had me out in like 09 or 10, something, I'd be in the middle of stretching circle. And obviously it's like Tulowitzki, Helton, there's some like big deals there. But then when they would say like, hey, you got a Seth Smith, and they're joking about how insignificant Seth Smith is. And I'd be like, come on, who doesn't know Ole Miss quarterback? And they were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you know. And so to research the little guy or like the 25th guy, at the time, the 25th guy on the team was Carlos Gonzalez. It was like he was the last guy on the team in 09. Like he was kind of up and down. I didn't know who he was. And so there's a bunch of photos. I'm like, wait, that's crazy. Like the best player on that team was hanging out with me because it's like he wasn't. He was like, I don't even know if he was up that time. So so it's been fun to honor all the players on the team. Now, obviously it helps like get a list, or like I remember going to a Dodger game one time where right before he said, hey, there was a guy that was just called up an hour ago and he's going to start, Blake DeWitt. Do you have that? I'm like, who?
No.
What's the AAA affiliate for this? Like, no, I don't. So that doesn't work. It's like to turn the corner and it's like, hey, you got a Mike Baxter Mets imitation, right? Like, what? So luckily, like on that list, like okay, so last week it was like, okay, let me find the best Joe Randa game, because a lot of those Royals from, I don't know, 28 straight years, like they weren't in postseason games I was watching. So it's like, all right, what does Mark Teahen do with this chest? Because his playoff resume is like, I can't find it. So the impression that I like doing is giving a hat tip and honoring the kind of the last guy on the bench just as much as the first one. And like a celebrity story. I remember, do you remember the like Fernando Mania, like bananas nature that happened right when Steven Strasburg came up? So this is like, I don't know, 14 or so. It was some point, Steven Strasburg comes up and it's like an athletic Jesus kind of scenario where I'd never even heard him talk, but it was like everyone would go to the game. He struck out 14 guys the first year. There was this like, so Ryan Zimmerman's mom and my mom both are in wheelchairs with MS. And then Zimmerman runs a MS fundraiser each year. And it's part of his contract is instead of just getting like $5 million more, he had CAA put in his contract. The Nats agreed to it that like he gets Nats Park for an event each year to do whatever he wants. So whether it's like with beer and his friends from high school taking batting practice or running a big thing, he has Nats Park for one night a year. And it's awesome. So he's kind of built into doing this great fundraiser for multiple sclerosis. And so I was there doing like entertainment for a couple of these. And then so then Strasburg is the biggest he's ever been. And he's walking out to the mound he's walking to the the bullpen pregame. And he's walking with his pitching coach at the time, Steve McCaddy. And I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. And so they're walking by and I yell out, "No way, Steve McCaddy!" And they both turn around like, wait, Strasburg's like the celebrity. McCaddy's like, do I owe you money? Like, how do you even know who I am? He was a pitcher for the A's in like 81, 82, 83. I was like, no way, what are you doing here? That's amazing. They were like, what? It was like, it was so crazy. And then, so I geek out more over the person that I collected baseball cards of than who I'm supposed to. So I'd like meet Albert Pujols or Matt Holliday or Ryan Howard or, Mike Trout or like, and I'm supposed to, but what happened is like, I would see Mike Aldretti like sitting on the sideline, or I would see Dave McKay, or I would see Steve McCann and be like, no way, that's Hal McRae, so like I should be like enamored. It's a little bit like that with LA. Once you live here long enough, especially in whatever neighborhood you're in, you'll see, okay, that's the 5th time I've seen Charlize Theron, or that's the 2nd time I've seen George Clooney. But then you'll see like the drummer from the band Men at Work and be like, whoa, no way. The drummer from Men at Work. Even the drummer's like, I'm a school teacher. I don't think they make money off the band. You know what I mean? Like it shifts where when I saw the dad from Wonder Years at the Hollywood Y, it's like I'd never seen a bigger celebrity in my life. Even though like I'd just seen Mel Gibson the week before, it's like, whoa, you're alive? Like, cause he dies in the last episode. So that's been funny with the field too, is there'll be, the Cardinals will be like, okay, at the time it was like Albert Pujols, Yadi Molina, that's going to be the biggest deal. And then as Adam Wainwright would have me imitate people, once I did Ryan Ludwig, he pulled out every player one by one in to see my Ryan Ludwig. It was like, why? It's like
that's awesome.
15th most important person in my mind for this, but to what's been so fun as a long-winded answer to the question is honoring each player that's kind of gotten that far, that's made the major league, even if no one's going to ask them for their autograph today because they're not the big star, or they're going to go down. And Prince Fielder does great imitations, and he even mentioned to me that when he got his crazy big contract, he felt weird imitating because it's like he's making $20 million a year. This guy might get cut later today, so for him it's like he said, I like when you come here because you're like the Sparklets water guy. Like there's nobody technically should have their feelings. Like you're not like, I don't know. It's like your standing is where you're not, you're kind of able to move above it to where there's no politics in and you literally clowning each person in this room. There's no reason to hold back. There's not like, what are you gonna get fired? Why didn't you get hired? Like there's just you're just here.
We got about 10 minutes, Alex, right? So we're good. Anybody
Yep.
else has any questions?
Patrick Lyons, you've had your hand raised for a while. Did you have a question or a stance? Okay, go ahead.
Gar, thanks so much for joining us. Congrats on having a Wikipedia page, but your brother who won a Tony does not. So congrats. I was curious where the nickname Gar came from and how you exactly consume baseball and how do you like work out a batting stance?
All right, good question. So right when to officially sign up to register for this event, I had to put in my actual name, and so it was on the screen for the first few minutes. So my name is George Allison. Yeah, rough. Maybe more feminine than the name Jillian or Olivia. So George Allison Ryness the fourth. So my parents are from LA. So they were unaware that a gar, which is the initials, is a long-snouted, ugly fish in the Gulf of Mexico. So they probably would have gone with something else if they knew that, like when I courted and married my wife in the South, and all her family and extended friend were like, gar, like the fish. Like I may have well been named like moronic trout, is like what it sounds like in the deep South. So yeah, they went with the initials because on the fourth, it was just like we already had a George, Al, Gary, so we just like went with the initials. My sister's name's Bevan too, so it's like we had like weird names, so it's Gar, Bevan, Nally, and Bryce. So that's originally how Gar. Yeah, so substitute teachers in DMV will say George, and because it's the fourth, when what is it, King Supers? What's the local the local grocery store? So when you go to the grocery store and they try to be like cool and hip and say your name, they'll be like, "Thanks so much, Mr. Iv." Mr. Ivy, that's like, thanks. It's actually Ryness, all right. And then so consume baseball. So luckily, Patrick, like realistically, answering that from like 2008 when I was trying to shoot those original videos is a different answer than how do I consume it now. Totally luckily, and you may even be one of them, I will get probably 10 times a year, I'll have, we'll call it the Patrick Lyons henchmen, where it's this group of people that will alert me to somebody's arrival. So it'll be like a John the Baptist of dorks will say, oh my gosh, Tyler Kepner of the New York Times is probably the best one at that. So he'll text me at all hours of the night being like, hey, there's a guy named Ronnie Rodriguez that's coming up with the Tigers right now. Like that's how I'll hear about Tapia. If somebody will ask me a question and then I'll know, okay, that means, when you see highlights, let's take Nomar. If somebody said, oh, you got to watch Nomar, and it's like, okay, cool. You went 2 for 4 last night and hit a homer. Oh, cool. I'll watch the highlights. Well, you won't get that in the highlights. You'll just get the so maybe like Mickey Tettleton, I would see, oh, whoa, look, his bat's flat right before, Jason Kipnis right before, okay. But anything really wacky, even Arenado, it's like, it's not clear if you just watch Arenado highlights, you get the whole thing, So now I'll have to watch at least those at bats of the game. And by the way, God bless all you cameramen that are on this call, but not a hilarious group. So very rarely will a cameraman be like, you getting a load of what this guy's doing in the on deck? No, it's like they're eating popcorn and this and that. So they're not always really focused. So sometimes I'll have to watch like a handful of games. Like, so if I was going to do like Zimmerman's event, like I'd have to watch a day game and a night game because the backup catcher will do the day game and so, like a pinch hitter. And so then I'll have to watch because normally they're such creatures of habit. What'll happen is if a guy does, like I watched probably 10 John Buck at bats, and he was one of the guys at this Royals event, and total dumb luck, one of them, he steps out of the box and he smells his armpit. So I'm like, this has a 50-50 chance of working. But when I do the John Buck, again, Do any of you know 4 people that would laugh at a John Buck imitation? All right? It's a niche group. So it's like, yeah, it's like 5th graders with teachers that are official scorekeepers. It's like, guess what? There's like 30 in the world. All right. And they all come near you guys. All right. So I go out with John Buck and like look like I lift weights with my neck and like mouth open and showing teeth. And then like look around like I'm kind of confused and then smell my armpit. Killed it, like annihilated the whole place. So it's like, okay, I guess he does it. And then sometimes I'm just making stuff up based on like we had these fierce rules against watching TV growing up. So I had to have a 3x5 card over the phone, and all of us had to take. We had 7 hours a week that the TV could be on. So if I watch This Week in Baseball, that's a half hour. If I watch Silver Spoons, that's a half hour. If I watch, so like Wheel of Fortune, every like cultural reference of like random shows that were on, I just didn't watch it because we weren't allowed to have it on. So what would happen is I would take a bunch of baseball cards, lay them out, because I wasn't, my siblings are all younger than me, were like sleeping, but I couldn't be outside, but I couldn't watch TV. So I would like lay out all these baseball cards and kind of like pretend to be them. I didn't even know if they were righty or lefty, but I would see like chest hair from Ron LaFleur. So I was like, okay, well, he's probably like kind of a tough guy. So if somebody now asked me for Ron LaFleur and I stuffed my chest out, his teammates are like, that's totally Ron. I don't even know if he's right or left. I just remember like the card. So like if on Calderon, it's like, well, if I could see chest hair, he must think he's pretty big time. And then other words, it was like, every Mark Grace card, it's like his elbow's never straight. Every Harold Reynolds base hit, it's like, it's always like this. So if I just kind of exaggerate the Juan Gonzalez, like he never straightens his arm for whatever reason, they're like, how do you know I have a crooked arm? Harold Reynolds is like, how do you know I have a crooked arm? It's like, I don't know, I just never seen it straight, like, so a lot of times the imitation is of the card. So I had an hour conversation at dinner before walking in to do the performance thing with Willie Wilson. Okay. 6'3", one of the fastest people on my brain just melted each cigarette he smoked as we were talking. So at one point, there's like George Brett's like, all right, let's see Willie. So I'm like, all right, well, he kind of did the thing, and then I step out and then have a cigarette kill. It's like that. I would have done that before 30 minutes ago. Why would I think he smoked? And he would tell stories about everybody smoked in the 70s. He's like, oh boy. So so Patrick, if I see a person do anything, the idea is I just try to like ramp it up a million, either in bravado or effeminacy. So whatever the thing is. So like when Derek Jeter calls for time and his eyes are not even halfway open, you're making him seem even smoother just kills. Whereas at the same time, it's like you make a person look tougher, or a lot of players, I would say the players are about 50-50 self-aware. So you'll have like Derek Jeter, I got just 20 minutes with Jeter by himself, where he works out in Tampa one time, friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, all of a sudden I ended up with him. And so he's like, all right, let me see me. And so I do it. Well, you call for time. And he was like, I don't do that. I don't do that. I mean, really, no kidding. He pushed back. And even some of the trainers came over and they're like, does he not? I don't understand how he doesn't know that. So whereas like Darryl Strawberry, he was like, all right, Gar, let me see me. And I'm like, all right, well, you want you on the Mets, or you want you on like the Giants and Yankees? Because on the Giants and Yankees, you used to tug your sleeve up way more. He balls his fist, gets a serious look on his face, and he kind of lunges toward me. I'm like, oh my gosh, what just happened? And he's like, bro, nobody gets that. That's awesome. And he gives me a hug. I'm like, okay. So like the self-awareness level of what, or like if a person's really strong, he may not think of himself that strong, because there's a bunch of people that are stronger. He doesn't have 50 homers or whatever. So if I think it got, Josh Willingham looks like he does like neck exercises, I'll walk around like this and all the players will laugh, and he'll look around like, I don't do that. Like what? So it's wild how often the players like, why are you guys laughing? And God bless the females on this call, but as a male, the only way you're familiar with anything you do is from 8 kids in junior high laughing at you. So if I'm like, hey, you move your legs a lot, or you're kind of fidgety. No, I'm not. Yeah. So then if somebody's like, okay, Gar, and like untwists the Snapple cap and like shakes his leg and everyone laughs. I'm like, why are you guys laughing? Like most of us aren't that self-aware. So we don't, so it's not until someone tells a joke where a bunch of people laugh, or if someone's like, oh yeah, you never name drop, and then everyone laughs, you're like, wait, right, name drop? You know, like that, like you only know things about you when a group of people laugh at you. So a lot of times on the imitation, it's wild to see people be like, I don't do that with my neck, or I don't walk like I'm a monster, but it's just like I'm heightening, I'm exaggerating the thing I've noticed first about them. And in a lot of ways, it's not whatever the hitting coach would look at. So like the hitting coach might look at like Ken Griffey's like eye line or what he's doing with his arms, whereas I just think of like, it's like his booty, you know, like I just think about like how he stands and he's just like so smooth and fit. So a lot of the times, like, you know, with Gary Sheffield, it's like, oh, he does the bat wag. Whereas the players will react to me putting my, you know, like fingers between the bat, not blinking and looking like I don't get the joke. You know, like that's Sheffield. It's not just that.
That's right. Hey, I think we're up against the clock here, and I apologize. Jillian, Gar, or should I say George, absolutely spectacular. Just a wonderful visit from both of you. The two of you have been amazing today, and we are so grateful as a chapter for 2 hours. Thank you so much for being a part of our day. Follow Gar on social media. Wave to Jillian at the ballpark. For all of you, have a great Saturday. We're so thankful you joined us, and we'll see you again real soon this month. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Alex.